Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine War news extra, an update extra, where I'm going to give you some further context concerning some subjects about the war in Ukraine. We're going to talk predominantly about, or entirely about, Robert Brovdi, Magyar, from Magyar's Birds, now in charge of the Unmanned Systems Forces, the drone guru in Ukraine. He's released some figures that we're going to delve into, and I'll give you a little bit more information about him as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It means a lot. It helps out. Click on the bell, click all rather than personalize, and you'll get your notifications forthwith. Thank you. Right, let's get to it. So he released some nuggets yesterday saying, well, part of which included, we've lost 27 of our own. In return, we destroyed 24,895 Russian troops and 76,950 targets. That's 2 entire army corps. For every one of ours, 1,000 of theirs. In other words, the ratio of deaths for Robert Magyar against the Russians that they have killed is 1 to 1,000. That is astonishing. Absolutely astonishing, if indeed true. So who is Robert Brovdi? I think we've maybe missed out on learning about him somewhat. Some of you will know this already, but for many of us, we just take it as a given that he's a bit of a legend in the armed forces of Ukraine, and he came from outside of the armed forces as a businessman. So I'm just going to read you through what is in his Wikipedia page, because I think it's just a good, gives you a good understanding of kind of who he is and what he's about. So he is Robert Brovdi, commonly known as call sign Magyar, which is Hungarian for Hungarian, or well, the Magyar I think is Hungarian. Magyar is Ukrainian for Hungarian. You've got the opposition leader in Hungary opposed to Viktor Orban, who's called Peter Magyar, and that means Peter Hungarian, and that's quite an apt name, I think, for him. Anyway, so he's a Ukrainian soldier, politician, and businessman who is a founder of the Ukrainian military drone unit Magyar's Birds. So he was born in Uzhhorod, which is located in far west of Ukraine, near the Hungary-Ukraine border. He's part of the Hungarian minority in the region, which was the inspiration for his military nickname. He attended Uzhhorod National University. This is interesting because he's been criticized by Viktor Orban previously, and he's been very, very robust in his comebacks. And Peter Shihata, the foreign minister for Hungary as well. Prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, he was a successful businessman in the field of agriculture, having headed the Ukrainian Agricultural Exchange. He also headed the Zakarpattia regional branch of the public organization Front for Change for some time. And he was involved in a corporation, director of the corporation of Bread Investbud. Anyway, it's worth, I'm just going to jump to his military service, although it's interesting that in January 2019, a bag of grenades was thrown into the backyard of Brovdi's father's house in Storozhnitsia, a district of Uzhhorod. Police opened an investigation into the attack, but unable to identify perpetrator. Early in the morning of February 16th, a similar attack occurred with an unknown person firing a grenade launcher at Brovdi's mother's house. She ended up not being injured. So, he's been involved in a few things to do with that Bread Invest Bud and other things. Anyway, military service. In February 2022, shortly before the start of the war, Brovdi joined the Territorial Defense Forces of Ukraine, where he assigned to the 206th Battalion of the 241st Brigade. During the Kiev offensive, he took part in the evacuation of civilians from Irpin during the battle for the city, and took part in fighting for Bucha and Borodyanka. In late April, his unit was sent to the front line in the Kherson area of the southern campaign. After some time, Brovdi decided that he could be doing more with his entrepreneurial skills instead of, quote, sitting in a sodden trench. Against bureaucratic procedure, he raised funds on his own to buy a fleet of drones, with which he set up the aerial reconnaissance unit Magyar's Birds. The unit was a part of the 28th Mechanized Brigade from April to August 2022. The unit is composed of a few dozen pilots with hundreds of drones. Like much of the Ukrainian army, the drones used by the unit are the Chinese-made civilian DJI Mavics, so it was said at the time. The unit is involved in 5 primary types of drone reconnaissance, locating enemy forces, patrolling the front line, artillery spotting attacks with kamikaze drones, and occasionally dropping explosive devices on enemy soldiers. And of course, this has now evolved to doing all sorts of stuff. So Magyar's birds were incorporated into the 59th Motorized Brigade in August 2022 and took part in the Battle of Bakhmut until March 2023, when Brovdi said in a video posted to social media that the unit had been ordered to withdraw after 110 days of fighting. In April 2023, Brovdi warned that the Chinese government may cut off Ukrainian military access to the Mavic drones and urged Ukrainian soldiers to be careful with the drones they had. Magyar's birds often release videos of their greatest successes on the battlefield, which feature Russian soldiers dying, which journalists have described as having undoubtable propaganda value. Brovdi has become a popular figure in Ukraine among war watchers on social media for his, quote, salty analogies and metaphors shrouded in black humor and, quote, colorful Western Ukrainianisms. In his narration of videos he publishes of his unit's activities, Brovdi was awarded the Medal for the Defense of Ukraine by Ukrainian President Zelensky on the 28th of August 2023 and a Hero of Ukraine on the 8th of May 2025. Magyar's birds units have been taking part in the fighting in and around Krenki since at least November 2023. On the 16th of January 2024, Brovdi announced on a Telegram channel that Magyar's birds have been incorporated in the Ukrainian Marine Corps and at the 414th Marine Strike Drone Battalion. And that's the 414th Marine. This is what you see here, 414 Magyar's birds. He was appointed commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces on 3rd of June 2025. On August 28th, 2025, Hungary barred Brovdi from entering the country in response to a Ukrainian drone attacks on the Druzhba pipeline in Russia. Okay, so he is one for social media, for fundraising, for innovating, for sort of gamifying the system as well, to the point where, you know, points win prizes, prizes win drones, better drones, and you know, he's always trying to innovate in many different ways, not least, you know, technologically and in terms of fundraising, but also in a way that the Unmanned Systems Forces is organized and motivated and so on and so forth. So this is what was announced yesterday. Magyar's update. 4,954 applications to join the Unmanned Systems Forces were received during the first week, one application every 2 minutes since the start. So remember, he announced that there were 15,000 job openings, half of which are going to be filled by civilians. So they continue. No rose-tinted glasses. A year and a half ago, when recruitment was still for the 414th Separate Regiment, Magyar's birds, the demand was 50 people per opening, and we only recruited a few hundred. Now we're hiring over 15,000 for an entire branch, 12 USF units. Times have changed. The war continues. Over those 18 months, the birds lost 27 comrades, less than 1% of the unit's personnel. So that would mean that there's probably some 300 personnel in the unit. Eternal memory to the fallen heroes. During the same period, we destroyed 24,895 worms. So that's what he calls Russians, or they call Russians, and struck or neutralized 76,950 targets. The force is a means of 2 full enemy army corps. For each of our bird comrades, the enemy paid with 1,000 worms. That is the price of retribution. So that's absolutely staggering. Now, of course, this is not quite apples to apples. You know, Ukrainians haven't lost 1 to 1,000, of course, in the war. But as far as the effectiveness of this unit is concerned, that they have lost 1 person to every 1,000 they take out from the Russians, you can understand why Zelensky, the Ukrainians, Brovdi, so on and so forth, put so much store in these guys. And they want there to be this really effective drone wall, this drone corridor that goes up the front lines, because the Ukrainians don't have the people to man the front lines. And if they can replace men in sodden trenches with drones, then the ratio is 1 to 1,000. Why wouldn't you do that? The effectiveness of these guys is absolutely incredible. Now, the challenge is you still need people to you still need people to take territory, certainly take it back. You still need infantry. You can't just completely replace infantry with drones, but you can to a large degree. The challenge is also that if you are relying solely on drone corridors, then actually if you are able to punch through those drone corridors, then it's kind of you're freewheeling yourself around the enemy area. Like that, because there are so few infantry manning these positions right across the front line, it means that the Ukrainians are very stretched defensively and very vulnerable. If you're over relying on a drone corridor, this is why motorbikes are so prevalent at the moment. If you can scoot through these drone corridors, yeah, you might lose a whole bunch of your motorcyclists, but as long as you get some through and you establish a position on the other side, and you can keep doing that, then that's how you move forward. So it is an effective way of defending up to a point, but there are vulnerabilities. But I guess you'd rather lose territory than people. That's kind of what the Ukrainians are saying. So they will probably rely on units like this to a much greater degree than they rely on people in trenches, I would have thought, going forward. So here it says received 4,954 applicants, including civilians 2,040, military 2,335. So that's your 50-50 split there. Personnel already in the USF units. Oh, I said 300, 579. So that's how many they have currently serving in the unmanned systems forces units. They've processed 3,795 of these applications, and they have forwarded to the unit 652 of those in initial communication with candidates 1,078. I wonder how many of those people they will take. I wonder what the conversion rate is for applicants to successful members of the USF. A reminder, half of these are specialists from civilian life, which means we're not only looking for Rambos. We need nerds, big brain and skilled hands, not necessarily both in one person. We're looking for those who never held an assault rifle, only a mouse, those who will fight without leaving their monitor or tablet. This is modern warfare. This is why Pete Hegseth was ridiculed recently, or not just Pete Hegseth, but people who have been, I remember I showed you this, some army dude in the US saying, this is what the fighting force needs to be, these kind of lethal warriors. And there's some beefed up Marine, like really jacked up guy in this tight t-shirt, and whoever it was commenting on how, this is what it should be like. And then other people were just posting underneath of someone with dreadlocks, pink dreadlocks or whatever, in army uniform, flying a drone. And you're like, no, this person has killed more people than that lethal warrior you're talking about over there. There are a range of skills that are needed to carry out a war. And as you can see here from the Unmanned Systems Forces claims, they don't need Rambos. You can have some Rambos, they will have their place. But we also need nerds, big-brained people, with skilled hands, and not necessarily both with the same person. We're looking for those who never held an assault rifle, only a mouse. Those who will fight without leaving their monitor or tablet. We need people who, using drones, will relentlessly crush the worm force from a distance. That's the key. How long have you heard me saying it? Ukraine has to fight this war from a distance. That is how they save their own precious human lives. Drones are really important. FPV drones, Mavic drones, reconnaissance drones, bomber drones, dive bomber drones, Baba Yaga drones, near rear 200-kilometer range FP2 drones, or Bobas, or maybe larger reconnaissance drones, your fixed wing ones like your Sharks or your Vectors. And then HQ1s, HQ2s, your kind of Lancet equivalents, Ram 2X drones. And then Warmate from Poland, those sort of drones. Then you go into distance drones and missiles. FP5s, FP1s, ballistic cruise missiles, your Storm Shadows, and so on and so forth. Ukraine has to fight at a distance. You don't lose any of your troops if you're fighting from a distance. And the stats are there pretty clearly for you. These guys have lost 27 over the course of their existence. They exist on a 1 to 1,000 ratio there. That's how, at least partly, how you prosecute this defensive war. So, we need people who, using drones, will relentlessly crush the worm force from a distance, he says, fire in their eyes and hatred for the enemy. As capable as our brothers and sisters in this video, who have already joined the USF, stop running from the army, fly. Join the unmanned systems forces. You are needed here and now. You will serve where you choose, and as who you choose personally. This is a really interesting way of doing recruitment here, because actually they're appealing to people who have run from joining the army, who are scared to join the army, and saying, look, fly for us. You can sit in front of a monitor. As long as you have that hatred for the enemy and a willingness to relentlessly crush the enemy, then you've got a place with us and you can serve where you choose. Type 3 letters online, USF, or apply here, and so on and so forth. Follow live results here, and then, yeah, from Magyar. Absolutely incredible what these guys have achieved and what Brovdi had himself achieved through his dedication to innovation and dedication to succeed. Incredible stats. But, you know, as I say, it's not kind of apples to apples. And it'd be interesting to see what, say, the Rubicon stats would be in terms of their ratios. When I say it's not apples to apples, you know, you're comparing drone operators to all other targets. Yeah, but of course, you know, what you really need to understand is the overall deaths for Ukrainians compared to the Russians. But my goodness, how effective are these people? Absolutely incredible. Anyway, I thought I'd just hit you with some of those claimed stats there from Robert Brovdi and give you a little bit more information about him. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.